Question 1. Comparative studies suggest that when encountering an individual exhibiting signs of nervousness and attempting to avoid direct eye contact near a U.S. port of entry in California, what is the most appropriate initial response for a U.S. Border Patrol agent? Option A. Ignore the individual's behavior, as nervousness is not a direct indicator of illegal activity and could be attributed to cultural differences or the stress of the situation. Option B. Display a visible weapon and issue a loud verbal command to stop, to preemptively deter any potential hostile actions. Option C. Observe the individual's behavior and surroundings for further indicators of intent or threat, while maintaining a safe distance and preparing to engage in a lawful, non-confrontational manner if necessary. Option D. Immediately approach the individual with a firm demeanor and demand identification, assuming their behavior indicates illicit activity. Correct answer is C. Observe the individual's behavior and surroundings for further indicators of intent or threat, while maintaining a safe distance and preparing to engage in a lawful, non-confrontational manner if necessary. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for U.S. Border Patrol agents, balancing the imperative to secure the border with the ethical and legal obligations to treat individuals encountered with dignity and respect, and to follow established protocols for processing. The professional challenge lies in the potential for misinterpretation of behavior, the pressure of time, and the need to make rapid assessments while adhering to strict legal and procedural guidelines. Careful judgment is required to avoid both excessive force and dereliction of duty. The best approach involves a systematic and evidence-based assessment of the individual's behavior and intent, prioritizing de-escalation and adherence to established U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) directives. This approach requires observing the individual's actions, verbal cues, and any potential threats, while simultaneously preparing to implement appropriate, lawful, and proportionate responses as dictated by CBP policy and the U.S. Constitution. This aligns with the legal framework that governs the use of force, emphasizing necessity and proportionality, and the ethical imperative to uphold individual rights. An incorrect approach would be to immediately resort to physical restraint or the display of a weapon based solely on the individual's perceived nervousness or unfamiliarity with the environment. This fails to account for legitimate reasons for anxiety and could be construed as an excessive or unwarranted use of force, violating the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures and CBP's own use of force policies, which mandate de-escalation and proportionality. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the individual's potentially evasive or furtive movements, assuming they pose no threat. This would be a failure to uphold the agent's duty to secure the border and investigate suspicious activity, potentially allowing for the introduction of contraband or unauthorized individuals into the United States. This dereliction of duty could have significant national security implications and violate CBP operational mandates. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to engage in accusatory questioning or to make assumptions about the individual's legal status without first conducting a proper assessment of their behavior and the surrounding circumstances. This could lead to profiling and discriminatory practices, which are contrary to CBP's commitment to fair and impartial enforcement. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes observation, assessment, and adherence to established protocols. This involves a continuous evaluation of the situation, considering all available information, and selecting the least intrusive but most effective response necessary to achieve mission objectives while respecting individual rights. This framework emphasizes situational awareness, adherence to legal and policy guidelines, and the judicious application of authority. Question 2. The investigation demonstrates that a U.S. Border Patrol agent, while conducting a routine vehicle inspection at a port of entry in Texas, observed a suspicious, unidentifiable substance protruding from a concealed compartment in a passenger vehicle. The agent, concerned about potential illicit materials, needs to determine the most appropriate course of action. Option A. Secure the suspicious substance as evidence, meticulously documenting its discovery, location, and appearance, and then follow established CBP protocols for evidence collection and preservation. Option B. Immediately dispose of the suspicious substance, deeming it non-critical to the inspection process, and allow the vehicle to proceed. Option C. Delay the formal collection and documentation of the substance, prioritizing the completion of other inspection tasks before returning to address the discovered item. Option D. conduct a more intrusive search of the vehicle without further justification beyond the initial observation, and then seize the substance without a formal evidence log. The correct answer is A. Secure the suspicious substance as evidence, meticulously documenting its discovery, location, and appearance, and then follow established CBP protocols for evidence collection and preservation. Explanation: the investigation demonstrates a complex scenario involving potential contraband detection and the subsequent handling of evidence, which is professionally challenging due to the need to balance border security imperatives with the strict adherence to legal procedures and individual rights. The U.S. Border Patrol agents' actions must be guided by established protocols to ensure the integrity of evidence and the legality of any enforcement actions. The best professional approach involves meticulously documenting all observations and actions taken during the encounter, including the specific location, time, and nature of any discovered items, and then securely collecting and preserving the suspected contraband as evidence according to established U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) guidelines. This approach is correct because it aligns with federal law enforcement standards for evidence handling, which mandate that all evidence be collected, preserved, and documented in a manner that maintains its integrity and admissibility in court. This ensures that any subsequent legal proceedings are not compromised by procedural errors. The U.S. Border Patrol Manual and relevant federal statutes, such as those governing search and seizure and evidence preservation, mandate this level of diligence. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dispose of the suspicious item without proper documentation or collection, as this would compromise the integrity of potential evidence and violate CBP procedures for handling contraband. This failure to follow protocol could lead to the exclusion of crucial evidence in any subsequent legal action and could result in disciplinary measures. Another incorrect approach would be to conduct a cursory search of the vehicle without probable cause or reasonable suspicion beyond the initial observation of the suspicious item, and then to seize the item without a clear chain of custody. This could violate Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, as well as CBP directives on proper search authority and evidence handling. A further incorrect approach would be to delay the proper collection and documentation of the item, instead focusing on other aspects of the inspection and only later attempting to secure the evidence. This delay could lead to the degradation or contamination of the evidence, rendering it unreliable and inadmissible. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to legal mandates and agency policy. This involves a clear understanding of the legal standards for searches, seizures, and evidence handling, coupled with a systematic approach to observation, documentation, and collection. When faced with a situation involving potential contraband, the agent should first assess the situation based on observable facts and established legal thresholds. If probable cause or reasonable suspicion exists, the agent should proceed with the appropriate investigative steps, ensuring all actions are meticulously documented and all evidence is handled according to strict protocols. This systematic and legally compliant approach is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the investigation and upholding the principles of justice. Question 3. Assessment of a U.S. Border Patrol agent's response in Texas to observing a suspicious vehicle with multiple individuals exhibiting signs of distress near a known smuggling route. What is the most appropriate initial action to ensure both operational effectiveness and legal compliance? Option A. Secure the immediate area and contact a supervisor and the relevant investigative unit to coordinate the response. Option B. Directly approach the vehicle and begin questioning the individuals to ascertain their status and intentions. Option C. Attempt to gather evidence of potential smuggling activity independently before notifying any superiors. Option D. Continue the patrol route as the observation is not a direct violation of law at that moment. The correct answer is A. Secure the immediate area and contact a supervisor and the relevant investigative unit to coordinate the response. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a Border Patrol agent in Texas to balance the immediate need for information gathering with the legal and ethical obligations concerning individual rights and the integrity of evidence. The agent must act swiftly but also deliberately, ensuring that any actions taken do not compromise the investigation or violate established protocols and constitutional protections. The pressure of a potential smuggling operation adds urgency, but this cannot override due process. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves securing the scene and immediately contacting a supervisor and the appropriate investigative unit. This approach is correct because it adheres to established U.S. Border Patrol protocols for handling potential criminal activity and evidence. It ensures that specialized personnel, trained in evidence collection and legal procedures, are brought in to manage the situation. This maintains the chain of custody, respects the rights of any individuals encountered, and maximizes the chances of a successful and legally sound investigation. This aligns with the U.S. Constitution's Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the Border Patrol's own operational guidelines that mandate supervisor notification and coordination with investigative teams for complex situations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Approaching individuals directly and questioning them without first securing the scene and notifying a supervisor is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses established protocol, potentially contaminates evidence, and could lead to the premature disclosure of investigative plans or the loss of valuable information. It also risks violating the rights of individuals by conducting potentially coercive questioning without proper legal safeguards in place. Attempting to gather evidence independently without proper training or authorization is also professionally unacceptable. Border Patrol agents are trained in specific procedures for evidence collection. Deviating from these procedures can render evidence inadmissible in court, jeopardizing the entire investigation. Furthermore, it could expose the agent to legal liability and compromise the integrity of the U.S. legal system. Ignoring the situation and continuing the patrol route is the most professionally unacceptable approach. This constitutes a dereliction of duty. U.S. Border Patrol agents have a mandate to investigate suspicious activity and enforce immigration laws. Failing to act on a credible observation of a potential smuggling operation undermines national security and the agency's mission. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols and legal mandates. This involves 1. Situational awareness, recognizing the potential criminal activity and its implications. 2. Protocol adherence, immediately initiating the required notification and scene security procedures. 3. Escalation, ensuring that the appropriate specialized units are engaged. 4. Evidence integrity, understanding the importance of proper evidence handling. 5. Rights protection, respecting the constitutional rights of all individuals involved. This systematic approach ensures that actions are both effective and legally sound. Question 4. Benchmark analysis indicates that U.S. Border Patrol agents operating near the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona are tasked with identifying and interdicting individuals involved in illicit activities. An agent observes a vehicle traveling at a high rate of speed away from the border, approximately 20 miles inland, with its headlights off at dusk. The vehicle's occupants appear to be looking back repeatedly. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the agent to take? Option A. Disregard the vehicle's behavior as it is inland and not directly at the border crossing point, and continue with routine patrol. Option B. Immediately initiate a high-speed pursuit and attempt to apprehend the vehicle and its occupants due to suspected evasion. Option C. Initiate a lawful traffic stop to investigate the suspicious behavior and vehicle operation. Request identification and clearly state the reason for the stop. Option D. Conduct a full search of the vehicle and its occupants upon approaching the vehicle, as their behavior suggests potential criminal activity. The correct answer is C. Initiate a lawful traffic stop to investigate the suspicious behavior and vehicle operation, request identification, and clearly state the reason for the stop. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an immediate assessment of potential threats to national security and public safety while adhering strictly to established protocols and legal boundaries. The agent must balance the urgency of the situation with the imperative to act within the scope of their authority and the U.S. Constitution, particularly concerning individual rights. Misjudgment could lead to a breach of security, a violation of civil liberties, or a failure to apprehend a genuine threat. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves initiating a lawful stop and frisk based on reasonable suspicion, followed by a request for documentation and a clear articulation of the reason for the stop. This approach is correct because U.S. Border Patrol agents have the authority to stop and question individuals within a reasonable distance from the border based on reasonable suspicion of illegal entry or activity. A lawful stop allows for an initial inquiry, and if reasonable suspicion escalates to probable cause, further action, including a frisk for weapons if there is a reasonable belief the individual is armed and dangerous, is permissible under the Fourth Amendment. This method respects constitutional rights while enabling effective border security operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Initiating an immediate arrest and detention without further inquiry or evidence beyond the individual's presence near the border is an incorrect approach. This fails to meet the probable cause standard required for arrest and constitutes an unlawful seizure, violating Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. Conducting a full search of the individual's belongings and vehicle without reasonable suspicion or probable cause is also incorrect. This goes beyond the permissible scope of a stop and frisk and infringes upon the individual's right to privacy and protection against unreasonable searches. Ignoring the individual and continuing patrol without any form of engagement, despite observing potentially suspicious behavior, is an incorrect approach. While not a violation of rights, it represents a failure in the agent's duty to investigate potential threats to border security and could allow a genuine security risk to pass undetected. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a tiered approach to assessment and action. First, observe and assess the situation for any articulable facts that create reasonable suspicion. Second, if reasonable suspicion exists, initiate a lawful stop and question the individual, clearly stating the reason for the interaction. Third, based on the individual's responses and further observations, determine if probable cause exists for arrest or if a frisk for weapons is warranted due to a reasonable belief of danger. Throughout the process, maintain professionalism, respect individual rights, and meticulously document all actions and observations. Question 5. Regulatory review indicates that a U.S. Border Patrol agent encounters an individual walking near the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. The individual appears nervous and avoids direct eye contact. The agent approaches the individual to inquire about their presence in the area. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the agent to take? Option A. Initiate a standard border stop. Clearly state the purpose of the inquiry. Ask open-ended questions about the individual's presence and intentions, and cease questioning immediately if the individual invokes their right to remain silent or requests legal counsel. Option B. Continue to aggressively question the individual about their immigration status and reasons for being near the border, even if they appear hesitant or indicate a desire to not answer. Option C. Make assumptions about the individual's potential criminal activity based on their appearance, and use this as grounds for a prolonged detention and interrogation. Option D. Detain the individual immediately and conduct a full search of their person and belongings based on their nervous demeanor and proximity to the border. The correct answer is A. Initiate a standard border stop, clearly state the purpose of the inquiry, ask open-ended questions about the individual's presence and intentions, and cease questioning immediately if the individual invokes their right to remain silent or requests legal counsel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a Border Patrol agent to balance the immediate need for information gathering with the legal and ethical obligations to respect an individual's rights and due process. The agent must make a rapid assessment of a situation that could involve national security, humanitarian concerns, or criminal activity, all while operating within the strict legal framework governing border interactions in the United States. The potential for misinterpretation or overreach carries significant consequences, both for the individual encountered and for the integrity of the agency. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves a measured and legally compliant information gathering process that respects the individual's rights. This means initiating a standard border stop, clearly stating the purpose of the encounter, and asking open-ended questions to understand the individual's presence and intentions. If the individual expresses a desire to remain silent or requests legal counsel, the agent must immediately cease questioning and adhere to those requests, documenting the interaction thoroughly. This approach is correct because it aligns with the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the Fifth Amendment's guarantee against self-incrimination. U.S. Border Patrol agents are empowered to question individuals encountered near the border, but this authority is not unlimited, and must be exercised with respect for constitutional rights. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately detain the individual and conduct a thorough search of their belongings and person without any articulable suspicion of wrongdoing beyond their presence near the border. This violates the Fourth Amendment, as a lawful stop requires reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed. Simply being near the border does not, in itself, constitute reasonable suspicion for a full detention and search. Another incorrect approach is to pressure the individual for information after they have indicated a desire to remain silent or requested legal representation. This directly contravenes the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Agents are obligated to honor such requests, and continued interrogation after such an assertion is a violation of established legal precedent and agency policy, potentially rendering any subsequently obtained information inadmissible in court and leading to disciplinary action. A further incorrect approach is to make assumptions about the individual's intentions or status based on their appearance or origin, and to use this as justification for aggressive questioning or detention. This is not only ethically unsound but also legally problematic, as it can lead to discriminatory profiling, which is contrary to U.S. law enforcement principles and agency directives aimed at ensuring fair and impartial enforcement. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes constitutional rights and legal mandates. This involves 1. Assessing the immediate circumstances for any articulable facts that might warrant further investigation. 2. Initiating contact in a professional and non-coercive manner. 3. Clearly communicating the purpose of the interaction. 4. Actively listening to the individual's responses and respecting their rights, including the right to remain silent and the right to counsel. 5. Documenting all interactions accurately and objectively. And 6. Seeking supervisory guidance when faced with complex or ambiguous situations. This systematic approach ensures that actions are legally defensible, ethically sound, and aligned with the agency's mission. Question 6. Consider a scenario where a U.S. Border Patrol agent, while on patrol near the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona, observes a vehicle exhibiting erratic driving patterns and a visible bulge under a tarp in the truck bed. The agent initiates a stop, and upon approaching the vehicle, notices a strong odor of contraband emanating from the truck bed. The agent has reason to believe the vehicle may contain illegal substances or individuals. What is the most appropriate course of action for the agent to take immediately following the stop, adhering strictly to U.S. federal law and Border Patrol guidelines? Option A. Detain the individual and the vehicle indefinitely while awaiting further intelligence without initiating any formal legal process. Option B. Conduct a full search of the vehicle and its occupants without delay to confirm the presence of contraband. Option C. Allow the vehicle and its occupant to proceed without further investigation, given the potential for escalation and the need to avoid confrontation. Option D. Secure the individual and the vehicle and immediately contact a supervisor to initiate the process for obtaining a search warrant based on the observed probable cause. Correct answer is D. Secure the individual and the vehicle and immediately contact a supervisor to initiate the process for obtaining a search warrant based on the observed probable cause. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the Border Patrol agent to balance the immediate need for information gathering with the fundamental rights of an individual encountered during a Border Patrol operation. The agent must act decisively, but also adhere strictly to established legal protocols and ethical guidelines to avoid compromising the investigation or violating civil liberties. The pressure of a potential threat necessitates swift action, but this cannot override due process. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves securing the individual and the immediate area while simultaneously initiating the process for obtaining a warrant based on probable cause. This approach respects the individual's rights by not conducting a full search without legal authorization, while also preserving the integrity of potential evidence and ensuring officer safety. The U.S. Constitution, specifically the Fourth Amendment, protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures, requiring warrants based on probable cause for most searches. U.S. Border Patrol policy and training emphasize adherence to these constitutional protections, even in high-pressure situations. By securing the scene and contacting supervisors to initiate the warrant process, the agent acts within legal boundaries and ethical obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis, conducting a full search of the vehicle and its occupants immediately upon observing suspicious items without a warrant is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. This approach presumes guilt and bypasses the requirement for probable cause and judicial authorization for a search, potentially leading to the suppression of any evidence found and disciplinary action. Detaining the individual indefinitely without initiating any legal process for further investigation or questioning is also problematic. While detention for a reasonable period to investigate is permissible, prolonged detention without a legal basis or the initiation of warrant procedures infringes upon the individual's liberty rights and could be considered unlawful. Ignoring the suspicious items and allowing the individual to proceed without further investigation, despite the potential threat, would be a dereliction of duty. Border Patrol agents have a mandate to secure the border and investigate potential illegal activities or threats. Failing to act on observable suspicious circumstances, especially those that could indicate a security risk, is professionally unacceptable and undermines the agency's mission. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes constitutional rights and agency policy. This involves 1. Assessing the immediate threat to officer safety and public safety. 2. Securing the individual and the scene to prevent escape or destruction of evidence. 3. Identifying observable facts that constitute probable cause for a search. 4. Initiating the legal process for obtaining a warrant, which may involve contacting supervisors or a prosecutor. 5. Documenting all observations and actions meticulously. This structured approach ensures that actions are both effective and legally sound. Question 7. Upon reviewing a patrol log from a recent shift near the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona, an agent notes an encounter with a group of individuals walking along a less-traveled dirt road approximately 5 miles north of the international boundary. The individuals appeared visibly anxious and avoided direct eye contact when the agent's vehicle approached. Considering the agent's duty to enforce U.S. immigration laws, which of the following actions best represents the appropriate professional response? Option A. Accuse the individuals of attempting to enter the U.S. illegally and demand they return to the border. Option B. Immediately detain all individuals based on their perceived nervousness and avoidance of eye contact, pending further investigation. Option C. Initiate a standard immigration inspection by questioning the individuals about their citizenship and legal status in the United States. Option D. Continue the patrol without interacting with the individuals, assuming their presence alone does not constitute a violation. The correct answer is C. Initiate a standard immigration inspection by questioning the individuals about their citizenship and legal status in the United States. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an immediate assessment of a situation that could involve a violation of U.S. immigration law, while also demanding adherence to established protocols for interacting with individuals encountered near the border. The Border Patrol agent must balance the need for thorough investigation with the imperative to treat all individuals with respect and within legal boundaries. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate border crossings and potential illegal activity, and to act decisively without overstepping authority. The best approach involves initiating a standard immigration inspection. This approach is correct because it aligns directly with the statutory authority and operational directives of U.S. Border Patrol. Agents are empowered and required to question individuals encountered within the vicinity of the U.S. border to determine their immigration status and admissibility. This process allows for the lawful collection of information necessary to enforce immigration laws, such as the Immigration and Nationality Act. It is a systematic and legally sanctioned method for addressing potential border security concerns. An incorrect approach would be to immediately detain the individuals based solely on their presence near the border and their perceived nervousness. This fails to recognize that nervousness can stem from many factors unrelated to illegal immigration and that lawful presence in the U.S. is a possibility. Such immediate detention without a basis for reasonable suspicion or probable cause could constitute an unlawful seizure under the Fourth Amendment and violate established Border Patrol procedures that mandate an initial inspection. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the individuals and continue the patrol without any interaction. This is professionally unacceptable as it represents a dereliction of duty. Border Patrol agents have a mandate to patrol the border and investigate suspicious activity. Failing to engage with individuals encountered in a border zone, especially if their behavior raises any questions, could allow potential violations of U.S. law to go undetected, compromising border security. A further incorrect approach would be to engage in accusatory questioning without first establishing a basis for such questioning. This could include making assumptions about their legal status or intent. Such behavior is unprofessional, can create an adversarial environment unnecessarily, and may prejudice the individual's rights. Professional decision-making in these situations requires a systematic, lawful, and respectful approach, starting with a standard inspection to gather facts before making any determinations or taking further action. Question 8. When evaluating a vehicle approaching a U.S. Border Patrol checkpoint in Arizona, and the agent notes the vehicle is a make and model commonly used in smuggling operations, but observes no other suspicious behavior from the driver or occupants, what is the most appropriate initial course of action? Option A. Observe the vehicle's approach and the occupant's demeanor for any indicators that might warrant further investigation, while remaining prepared to engage according to established protocols if suspicious activity arises. Option B. Immediately initiate a stop of the vehicle and demand all occupants exit for a search based on the vehicle's make and model. Option C. Disregard the vehicle and continue the patrol as there are no overt signs of illegal activity. Option D. Approach the vehicle in a confrontational manner, demanding immediate production of all identification and travel documents from the occupants. Correct answer is A. Observe the vehicle's approach and the occupant's demeanor for any indicators that might warrant further investigation, while remaining prepared to engage according to established protocols if suspicious activity arises. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for swift action in border security and the imperative to uphold individual rights and due process. A Border Patrol agent must exercise sound judgment to balance these competing demands, ensuring that actions are both effective in their mission and compliant with U.S. law and policy. Misjudgments can lead to legal repercussions, damage to public trust, and compromise of operational integrity. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a measured approach that prioritizes gathering information and assessing the situation within established legal parameters before taking definitive action. This means observing the vehicle and its occupants, noting any suspicious behaviors or indicators that might warrant further investigation, and consulting with supervisors or relevant intelligence resources if available and time permits. This approach is correct because it aligns with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, directives and the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. It allows for the collection of articulable facts that can justify a stop or further inquiry, thereby avoiding arbitrary or discriminatory actions. Incorrect approach is analysis. Initiating an immediate stop and search based solely on the vehicle's make and model, without any observed suspicious activity, is an incorrect approach. This action lacks the necessary reasonable suspicion required by U.S. law to justify a stop. It constitutes an arbitrary seizure, violating Fourth Amendment protections and CBP policy against profiling, approaching the vehicle aggressively, and demanding immediate identification and documentation from the occupants without any prior observation of suspicious behavior is also an incorrect approach. While agents have authority to question individuals in certain circumstances, an aggressive, confrontational stance without a basis for suspicion can escalate a situation unnecessarily and may be perceived as harassment, undermining lawful authority and potentially violating civil liberties. Deciding to ignore the vehicle and continue on patrol, despite the agent's gut feeling, is an incorrect approach if that gut feeling is based on objective, observable factors that, when considered together, might constitute reasonable suspicion. While agents should not act solely on hunches, they also should not disregard potential indicators of illicit activity that warrant further, lawful investigation. A failure to investigate potentially suspicious circumstances, when supported by articulable facts, could be seen as a dereliction of duty. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should employ a decision-making framework that begins with situational awareness and observation. They must then assess these observations against established legal standards, such as reasonable suspicion or probable cause, as defined by U.S. law. Consultation with supervisors or available intelligence is a critical step when uncertainty exists. Actions taken must be justifiable, documented, and consistent with agency policy and constitutional rights. The goal is to achieve mission objectives while upholding the rule of law and respecting individual liberties. Question 9. During a routine patrol near the U.S. border in Arizona, a U.S. Border Patrol agent observes a vehicle with an out-of-state license plate swerving erratically within its lane. The agent also notices the passenger in the vehicle making furtive movements, appearing to look back repeatedly at the agent's patrol car. Considering these observations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the agent to take regarding a potential search of the vehicle? Option A. Conduct a search of the vehicle immediately based on the out-of-state license plate, as vehicles from other states are often used for illicit activities. Option B. Detain the occupants and search the vehicle without further justification, as they are encountered near the border. Option C. Arrest the occupants based on the furtive movements observed, and then proceed with a search of the vehicle. Option D. Initiate a traffic stop to investigate the erratic driving and the passenger's behavior, and if reasonable suspicion is established, conduct a search of the vehicle. The correct answer is D. Initiate a traffic stop to investigate the erratic driving and the passenger's behavior, and if reasonable suspicion is established, conduct a search of the vehicle. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario that is professionally challenging due to the inherent tension between the need for swift action in border security and the imperative to uphold individual rights and due process. A U.S. Border Patrol agent must exercise sound judgment, balancing the immediate demands of their duty with the legal and ethical boundaries of their authority. This requires a deep understanding of the relevant U.S. federal laws and departmental policies governing searches and seizures at the border. The correct approach involves conducting a search based on reasonable suspicion, a standard that requires specific and articulable facts leading to a belief that a crime has been committed or is about to be committed. This standard is lower than probable cause but higher than a mere hunch. In this scenario, the agent's observation of the vehicle's erratic driving and the passenger's furtive movements provide articulable facts that, when considered together, could reasonably lead an officer to suspect criminal activity, such as the concealment of contraband or an attempt to evade detection. This approach aligns with the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, as well as U.S. Border Patrol policies that permit investigatory stops and searches based on reasonable suspicion at the border. An incorrect approach would be to conduct a search solely based on the vehicle's out-of-state license plate. This is a generalized characteristic and not a specific, articulable fact that would independently give rise to reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Relying on such a factor would constitute an arbitrary basis for a search, violating Fourth Amendment principles and departmental guidelines that prohibit profiling based on non-criminal indicators. Another incorrect approach would be to detain the occupants and search the vehicle without any articulable suspicion, simply because they are encountered near the border. Border searches are subject to less stringent requirements than interior searches. They are not entirely without constitutional limitations. A complete lack of suspicion would render the search unreasonable and unlawful. A further incorrect approach would be to immediately arrest the occupants based on the observation of furtive movements alone, without further evidence or a higher standard of probable cause. Furtive movements, while potentially contributing to reasonable suspicion, do not automatically equate to probable cause for arrest. Such an action would be premature and could lead to an unlawful arrest, undermining the integrity of the investigation and potentially violating the rights of the individuals involved. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes the collection and assessment of articulable facts. This involves observing behavior, vehicle characteristics, and environmental factors, and then evaluating these observations against established legal standards for stops, detentions, and searches. When reasonable suspicion is present, agents can proceed with further investigation, which may include questioning and a limited search. If probable cause develops, more intrusive actions like arrest or a more thorough search may be justified. Throughout this process, adherence to departmental policy and constitutional law is paramount. Question 10. Operational review demonstrates that a U.S. Border Patrol unit is tasked with patrolling a 150-mile sector. 3 patrol vehicles are deployed simultaneously from the same starting point. Vehicle A travels at an average speed of 50 miles per hour, Vehicle B at 60 miles per hour, and Vehicle C at 45 miles per hour. If all vehicles maintain their average speeds and travel the entire 150-mile sector, what is the total time elapsed from the moment the first vehicle starts until the moment the last vehicle completes the sector? Option A. Calculate the time for each vehicle individually, distance/speed, and sum these times. Option B. Sum the distances traveled by each vehicle and divide by the average speed of all vehicles. Option C. Calculate the time for each vehicle individually and report the shortest time. Option D. Calculate the average speed of all vehicles and divide the total distance by this average speed. The correct answer is A. Calculate the time for each vehicle individually, distance/speed, and sum these times. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for U.S. Border Patrol agents involving the accurate calculation of travel time and distance under varying conditions, which directly impacts resource allocation and operational efficiency. The need to estimate arrival times for multiple vehicles, each with different speeds and potential delays, requires precise mathematical reasoning and an understanding of how to apply basic physics principles to real-world situations. Miscalculations can lead to delayed responses, inefficient patrol patterns, and potentially compromised border security. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves calculating the travel time for each vehicle individually by dividing the distance by its respective average speed, and then summing these individual travel times to determine the total time elapsed from the start of the patrol to the arrival of the last vehicle. This method is correct because it adheres to the fundamental physics formula for time. Time equals distance/speed. By applying this formula to each vehicle and then aggregating the results, the agent accurately accounts for the unique travel characteristics of each unit, ensuring a precise estimation of the patrol's completion time. This aligns with the U.S. Border Patrol's operational mandate to utilize resources effectively and maintain situational awareness through accurate data. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to simply average the speeds of all vehicles and then divide the total distance by this average speed. This is flawed because it fails to account for the fact that each vehicle travels the same distance. Averaging speeds before calculating time can lead to a significant underestimation or overestimation of the total travel duration, especially if there are substantial differences in the speeds of the vehicles. This violates the principle of accurate data-driven decision-making required by U.S. Border Patrol protocols. Another incorrect approach is to calculate the time for each vehicle, but then only report the earliest arrival time. This is incorrect because it does not reflect the complete duration of the patrol or the time at which all units have completed their assigned route. The objective is to understand the total time commitment for the patrol, not just the first vehicle's completion. This oversight can lead to misinterpretations of resource availability and operational timelines, contrary to the agency's need for comprehensive operational awareness. A further incorrect approach is to add the distances together and then divide by the average speed of all vehicles. This is mathematically unsound as it misapplies the distance variable. The distance is the same for each vehicle, and adding them together creates an artificial, larger distance that does not correspond to any single vehicle's journey. This fundamentally distorts the calculation of travel time and is a clear deviation from the principles of accurate measurement and calculation expected of U.S. Border Patrol agents. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a systematic step-by-step calculation process. First, identify all relevant variables: distance, individual speeds. Second, apply the correct formula time equals distance/speed to each individual unit. Third, aggregate the results as required by the objective, e.g., total time elapsed. This methodical approach ensures accuracy and minimizes the risk of errors that could impact operational effectiveness and safety. When faced with calculations, always break down the problem into its constituent parts and apply the appropriate mathematical principles to each part before combining them. Question 11. Implementation of U.S. Border Patrol protocols in the Rio Grande Valley sector of Texas requires agents to assess individuals encountered near the border. An agent observes a group of individuals approaching the border fence from the Mexican side. They appear disheveled and are carrying small bags. The agent must decide on the immediate course of action. Which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. Border Patrol operational guidelines and legal mandates for such an encounter? Option A. Approach the group cautiously, initiate a standard encounter to determine their nationality and intentions, and be prepared to follow established procedures for asylum claims or other immigration statuses. Option B. Attempt to communicate with the group from a distance to ascertain their intentions, but avoid direct physical contact or engagement until their status is definitively known. Option C. Immediately detain the individuals based on their appearance and proximity to the border, assuming they are attempting to enter the U.S. illegally. Option D. Observe the group from a distance and report their presence to a supervisor, but take no direct action until further instructions are received to avoid potential legal complications. The correct answer is A. Approach the group cautiously, initiate a standard encounter to determine their nationality and intentions, and be prepared to follow established procedures for asylum claims or other immigration statuses. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for U.S. Border Patrol agents, balancing the imperative to secure the border with the legal and ethical obligations to individuals encountered. The professional challenge lies in discerning genuine threats from individuals seeking asylum or other forms of legal entry, all while operating under strict legal frameworks and agency policies. Misjudgments can have severe consequences, ranging from missed security threats to violations of human rights and legal due process. The correct approach involves a systematic and legally compliant process of initial assessment, information gathering, and referral based on established protocols. This approach prioritizes officer safety, border security, and adherence to U.S. immigration law and policy. Specifically, it requires agents to conduct a thorough initial encounter, gather relevant information about the individual's status and intentions, and then act according to established procedures for different scenarios, such as identifying potential asylum seekers and initiating the appropriate processing. This aligns with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) mission and the legal framework governing border encounters, which mandates fair treatment and due process while upholding national security. An incorrect approach would be to make assumptions about an individual's intentions or status based on superficial observations or biases, leading to premature conclusions or actions. For instance, immediately assuming an individual is an undocumented immigrant attempting to evade detection without further inquiry disregards the possibility of legal entry or a claim for asylum. This failure to conduct a proper assessment and follow established protocols violates the principles of due process and could lead to the wrongful detention or removal of individuals with legitimate claims. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore potential security risks due to a desire to expedite processing, thereby compromising border security. This would be a direct failure to uphold the primary duty of a Border Patrol agent. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with prioritizing safety for themselves and the public, followed by a meticulous adherence to established protocols and legal mandates. This involves active listening, objective observation, and a commitment to gathering facts before making any determinations. When encountering individuals at the border, agents should always consider the full spectrum of possibilities, from illegal entry to legitimate claims for asylum or other forms of immigration relief, and follow the prescribed procedures for each. Question 12. To address the challenge of maintaining border security while respecting individual liberties in California, a U.S. Border Patrol agent encounters an individual exhibiting nervous behavior and providing slightly inconsistent answers regarding their travel plans. What is the most appropriate course of action for the agent? Option A. Conduct a pat-down search of the individual based solely on the agent's intuition that something is amiss, without articulating specific observable facts to support this feeling. Option B. Allow the individual to proceed without further inquiry, as nervous behavior and minor inconsistencies are not sufficient grounds for suspicion under U.S. federal law. Option C. Engage in further lawful questioning, observe for additional objective indicators of illicit activity, and consult available intelligence databases to corroborate or refute the individual's statements, escalating to a search only if reasonable suspicion is established. Option D. Immediately detain the individual for a full search based on their nervous demeanor and slightly inconsistent answers, as these are clear indicators of potential smuggling. The correct answer is C. Engage in further lawful questioning, observe for additional objective indicators of illicit activity, and consult available intelligence databases to corroborate or refute the individual's statements, escalating to a search only if reasonable suspicion is established. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need to gather intelligence for national security and the imperative to uphold individual rights and due process. Border Patrol agents operate in a dynamic environment where quick decisions are often necessary, but these decisions must be grounded in established legal frameworks and ethical considerations. The potential for misinterpretation of behavior, the risk of profiling, and the consequences of overstepping legal boundaries necessitate a nuanced and informed approach. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic and evidence-based approach to questioning and observation, focusing on observable behaviors and verifiable information rather than assumptions or stereotypes. This approach prioritizes gathering information through lawful means, respecting the rights of individuals encountered at the border, and adhering strictly to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) operational guidelines and relevant U.S. federal statutes governing border searches and interrogations. Specifically, agents must rely on reasonable suspicion or probable cause as dictated by law to escalate searches or detentions. The focus remains on the individual's actions and stated purpose for travel, cross-referenced with available intelligence and established protocols, ensuring that any further action is legally justifiable and documented. This aligns with the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures and the principles of fair treatment. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves making assumptions about an individual's intent or potential threat based on their appearance, nationality, or perceived demeanor, without any objective indicators. This constitutes profiling, which is ethically unsound and legally impermissible under U.S. law and CBP policy. It can lead to discriminatory practices and erode public trust. Another incorrect approach is to conduct intrusive searches or prolonged detentions without establishing the legally required level of suspicion, reasonable suspicion for a pat-down or brief detention, probable cause for a more extensive search or arrest. This violates the Fourth Amendment and CBP directives, potentially leading to legal challenges and disciplinary action. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on generalized intelligence or broad directives without applying them to the specific circumstances of the individual encounter. While intelligence is valuable, its application must be tailored to observable facts and behaviors to avoid arbitrary enforcement. This can lead to the misapplication of resources and the unwarranted scrutiny of innocent individuals. Professional reasoning. U.S. Border Patrol agents must employ a decision-making framework that balances security imperatives with legal and ethical obligations. This framework begins with a thorough understanding of relevant U.S. federal laws, including the U.S. Constitution, particularly the Fourth Amendment, and CBP operational guidelines. Agents should be trained to observe and assess situations based on objective criteria, such as inconsistencies in statements, unusual behavior that deviates from normal travel patterns, or information corroborated by intelligence databases. When encountering individuals, the process should involve clear, lawful questioning, observation of nonverbal cues, and a systematic assessment of risk. Any escalation of action must be justified by a demonstrable level of suspicion or probable cause, meticulously documented, and conducted in a manner that respects the individual's dignity and rights. Continuous training and adherence to a strict code of conduct are essential to navigate these complex situations effectively and ethically. Question 13. Examination of the data shows that a U.S. Border Patrol agent is stationed at a port of entry in Texas and encounters an individual attempting to cross the border. The individual appears nervous and is carrying a large, unmarked backpack. Considering the operational environment and the agent's responsibilities under U.S. federal law, which of the following approaches best aligns with established protocols for assessing the situation? Option A. Initiate a search of the backpack based on the assumption that individuals carrying large, unmarked backpacks are likely engaged in smuggling. Option B. Immediately detain the individual and conduct a full search of the backpack based on their nervous demeanor and the size of the bag. Option C. Engage the individual with open-ended questions regarding their purpose for crossing, destination, and the contents of the backpack, while observing their demeanor and any physical indicators. Option D. Allow the individual to proceed without further questioning, assuming their nervousness is unrelated to any illicit activity. The correct answer is C. Engage the individual with open-ended questions regarding their purpose for crossing, destination, and the contents of the backpack, while observing their demeanor and any physical indicators. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between national security objectives and the rights of individuals encountered at the border. Border Patrol agent must exercise sound judgment to balance the need for thorough inspection with the requirement to treat all individuals with respect and adhere to established legal protocols. Misjudgment can lead to violations of civil liberties, compromise operational effectiveness, and damage public trust. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic and evidence-based approach to questioning and observation. This begins with establishing a lawful basis for interaction, such as the individual's presence within a designated port of entry or a reasonable suspicion of a violation of U.S. immigration or customs laws. The agent should then employ open-ended questions designed to elicit detailed information about the individual's purpose, destination, and the nature of any goods being transported. This approach allows for a comprehensive assessment of the situation, enabling the agent to identify potential discrepancies or indicators of illicit activity without resorting to assumptions or discriminatory profiling. Adherence to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, directives and relevant statutes, such as the Immigration and Nationality Act, is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves initiating a search or detention based solely on the individual's perceived ethnicity or national origin. This violates the principle of non-discrimination and is contrary to CBP policy, which prohibits profiling based on protected characteristics. Such an approach lacks the required reasonable suspicion or probable cause necessary for intrusive actions and can lead to legal challenges and damage the agency's reputation. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a cursory, superficial inspection without probing for detailed information. This might involve simply asking a few basic questions and allowing the individual to proceed without further inquiry, even if subtle indicators of concern are present. This failure to conduct a thorough assessment, as mandated by operational guidelines, could allow contraband or inadmissible individuals to pass through undetected, undermining border security. A third incorrect approach is to employ aggressive or accusatory questioning tactics from the outset. While assertive questioning is sometimes necessary, starting with an adversarial tone can create unnecessary tension, make individuals less cooperative, and potentially lead to misinterpretations of their responses. This approach deviates from the professional standard of maintaining a neutral and objective demeanor while gathering information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes lawful authority, objective evidence, and procedural fairness. This involves 1. Identifying the legal basis for the interaction. 2. Gathering information through systematic and objective questioning. 3. Observing behavioral cues and physical evidence. 4. Evaluating all gathered information against established criteria and policies. 5. Taking appropriate action based on the totality of the circumstances, ensuring all actions are consistent with U.S. laws and CBP regulations. Question 14. Research into U.S. Border Patrol operations in Texas has shown that agents often encounter individuals attempting to enter the country without authorization. Considering the legal and ethical responsibilities of a Border Patrol agent, which of the following actions best reflects professional conduct when encountering such an individual? Option A. Engage in a brief, informal conversation to gauge their intent, and if they appear nervous, allow them to proceed to avoid potential conflict. Option B. Conduct a lawful stop and search based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause, meticulously document all observations and actions, and initiate the appropriate processing procedures in accordance with CBP policy. Option C. Immediately detain the individual based on the assumption that they are attempting to enter illegally, without further investigation or observation. Option D. Use a stern demeanor and assertive questioning to intimidate the individual into revealing their immigration status and intentions. The correct answer is B. Conduct a lawful stop and search based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause, meticulously document all observations and actions, and initiate the appropriate processing procedures in accordance with CBP policy. Explanation. Research into U.S. Border Patrol operations reveals that officers frequently encounter individuals attempting to cross the U.S. border into Texas. These encounters often involve complex ethical and legal considerations, requiring officers to exercise sound judgment under pressure. The challenge lies in balancing the mandate to enforce immigration laws with the humanitarian obligation to treat all individuals with dignity and respect, while also ensuring national security. Misjudgment can lead to legal repercussions, damage to the agency's reputation, and potentially harm to individuals in custody. The best approach involves a thorough, objective assessment of the situation, prioritizing the safety of the officer and the public, and adhering strictly to established U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) policies and procedures regarding apprehension, processing, and the humane treatment of individuals. This includes conducting a lawful stop and search based on reasonable suspicion or probable cause, documenting all observations and actions meticulously, and initiating the appropriate processing procedures without prejudice or bias. This aligns with the legal framework governing border enforcement in the United States, emphasizing due process and adherence to federal statutes and agency directives. An approach that involves making assumptions about an individual's intent or background based on their appearance or demeanor, without concrete evidence, is professionally unacceptable. This violates the principle of acting on objective facts and can lead to discriminatory practices, which are contrary to CBP's commitment to fairness and equal treatment under the law. Furthermore, failing to follow established processing protocols, such as bypassing intake procedures or making unilateral decisions about an individual's status, undermines the integrity of the immigration system and can have severe legal consequences. Similarly, using excessive force or engaging in unprofessional conduct during an encounter, even when faced with resistance, is a direct violation of CBP policy and federal law, and can result in disciplinary action and civil liability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the legal authority and operational guidelines governing their actions. This involves continuous training and awareness of CBP policies, relevant federal statutes, and ethical standards. When faced with a situation, officers should focus on gathering objective information, assessing risks, and acting in a manner that is both lawful and consistent with agency directives. Documentation is paramount, ensuring a clear record of events and decisions. If uncertainty arises, consulting with supervisors or seeking guidance from established protocols is essential. Question 15. In California, a U.S. Border Patrol agent observes an individual approaching a port of entry exhibiting unusual nervousness and carrying a bulky backpack. The agent has a hunch the individual might be involved in smuggling. Which approach would be most appropriate for the agent to take in this situation, adhering to U.S. constitutional law? Option A. Immediately conduct a full search of the individual and their backpack, as the nervousness in backpack suggests potential smuggling activity. Option B. Conduct a pat-down search of the individual for weapons if reasonable suspicion of danger exists, and if contraband is immediately apparent by plain field during this lawful pat-down, seize it. Option C. Ignore the individual's behavior and allow them to pass through the port of entry without further interaction, as a hunch is not sufficient grounds for intervention. Option D. Detain the individual indefinitely based on the hunch of smuggling, and search the backpack without any further articulable facts. Correct answer is B. Conduct a pat-down search of the individual for weapons if reasonable suspicion of danger exists, and if contraband is immediately apparent by plain field during this lawful pat-down, seize it. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a Border Patrol agent in California to balance the immediate need for information with the strict legal limitations on search and seizure, specifically concerning the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The agent must make a rapid judgment call that respects individual rights while fulfilling their duty to secure the border. The best approach involves a careful, step-by-step process that prioritizes legal compliance. This begins with establishing reasonable suspicion for a stop, which is a lower standard than probable cause, but still requires specific, articulable facts. If reasonable suspicion exists, the agent can then conduct a limited pat-down for weapons if they have a reasonable belief the individual is armed and dangerous. If during this lawful pat-down, the agent feels an object that, by its plain feel, is immediately apparent as contraband, they may seize it. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the Fourth Amendment's protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, as interpreted by Supreme Court precedent like Terry v. Ohio. It ensures that any intrusive action is justified by objective facts and is limited in scope to what is necessary to address the immediate threat or suspicion. An incorrect approach would be to conduct a full search of the individual's belongings or person without probable cause, simply because the individual appears nervous or is carrying a backpack. This violates the Fourth Amendment by exceeding the scope of a lawful pat-down and conducting a search without the necessary legal justification. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the individual's behavior and fail to investigate further, even if there are articulable facts suggesting potential illicit activity. This would be a failure to uphold the agent's duty to secure the border. Finally, relying solely on a hunch or generalized suspicion without specific, observable facts to justify a search or seizure is also professionally unacceptable and legally unsound. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes the sequential application of legal standards. First, assess for reasonable suspicion based on observable facts. If present, proceed to the next permissible action, such as a Terry stop. If a pat-down is warranted for officer safety, ensure it is limited to searching for weapons. Only if contraband is immediately apparent by plain field during a lawful pat-down can it be seized. Throughout this process, documentation of the specific facts and observations that justify each action is crucial for accountability and legal defense. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that when a U.S. Border Patrol agent operating near the southern border of Arizona encounters a group of individuals exhibiting signs of distress and carrying what appear to be personal belongings, but also displaying furtive movements and attempting to avoid direct observation, what is the most appropriate initial course of action to uphold both national security and legal obligations under U.S. federal law? Option A. Secure the immediate area, conduct a preliminary assessment for any immediate threats to agent safety or national security, and then initiate standard protocols for identification and questioning to determine legal status and intent, in accordance with the Immigration and Nationality Act and CBP directives. Option B. Observe the individuals from a distance for an extended period to gather more information before making any approach, to avoid potentially escalating a situation or compromising a larger operation. Option C. Approach the individuals cautiously, offer immediate humanitarian assistance due to their apparent distress, and defer any security assessment or questioning until their immediate needs are met, regardless of their behavior. Option D. Immediately detain all individuals based on the furtive movements and avoidance behavior, assuming a security risk, and proceed with a full search of their belongings and persons without further preliminary assessment. The correct answer is A. Secure the immediate area, conduct a preliminary assessment for any immediate threats to agent safety or national security, and then initiate standard protocols for identification and questioning to determine legal status and intent, in accordance with the Immigration and Nationality Act and CBP directives. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the nuances of border security operations in the United States requires a deep understanding of the legal framework and ethical considerations governing U.S. Border Patrol agents. This scenario is professionally challenging because it demands immediate, on-the-ground decision-making that balances national security imperatives with the humane treatment of individuals encountered at the border, all while adhering strictly to U.S. federal law and departmental policy. The agent must navigate complex situations involving potential threats, humanitarian concerns, and the legal rights of individuals, often with limited information and under pressure. The best professional approach involves prioritizing the immediate safety and security of the border and the agent, followed by a thorough and lawful processing of any individuals encountered. This means securing the area, assessing any immediate threats, and then initiating the standard procedures for identification, questioning, and determining the legal status of individuals, all in accordance with the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP directives. This approach ensures that all actions are legally sound, procedurally correct, and contribute to the overall mission of border security and immigration enforcement. An incorrect approach would be to immediately detain all individuals without a preliminary assessment of immediate threats or their legal status, potentially violating their rights and misallocating resources. Another incorrect approach is to ignore potential security risks based solely on the appearance or stated reason for presence, which compromises border integrity. Furthermore, Making assumptions about an individual's intentions or legal standing without following established protocols is a significant ethical and legal failure, as it bypasses due process and could lead to wrongful detentions or missed threats. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with situational awareness and threat assessment. This is followed by a clear understanding of applicable laws and policies, ensuring that actions are always within legal boundaries. Next, agents should consider the ethical implications of their decisions, particularly regarding the treatment of individuals. Finally, adherence to established protocols and reporting procedures is crucial for accountability and effective operational management. Question 17. Strategic planning requires U.S. Border Patrol agents in Texas to consider the most effective and legally compliant method for responding to a report of unauthorized individuals crossing the border near a populated area. Option A. Immediately apprehend all individuals, secure the immediate area, and initiate the required CBP reporting and processing procedures without delay. Option B. Apprehend all individuals and hold them in an unsecured location while awaiting further instructions from a supervisor, prioritizing detainment over immediate processing. Option C. Apprehend all individuals and conduct a preliminary assessment of their status and any potential threats before initiating any formal reporting or notification to supervisors. Option D. Focus on observing and documenting the individual's movements from a distance to gather intelligence before making any attempt at apprehension or reporting. The correct answer is A. Immediately apprehend all individuals, secure the immediate area, and initiate the required CBP reporting and processing procedures without delay. Explanation. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the operational environment and the legal framework governing U.S. Border Patrol operations in Texas. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for swift action to secure the border and the imperative to adhere strictly to U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) directives and federal law regarding the apprehension and processing of individuals. Misjudgment can lead to legal challenges, compromised operational effectiveness, and ethical breaches. The best approach involves prioritizing immediate threat assessment and securing the area, while simultaneously initiating the formal reporting and processing procedures as mandated by CBP policy and federal statutes. This ensures that while immediate security concerns are addressed, all subsequent actions are legally sound and procedurally correct. This aligns with the U.S. Border Patrol's mission to enforce U.S. laws and regulations, including those related to immigration and border security, by ensuring that all encounters are documented and processed according to established protocols. The legal justification lies in upholding the integrity of the immigration system and ensuring due process for all individuals encountered. An approach that focuses solely on immediate apprehension without initiating the required documentation and notification protocols is procedurally flawed. It risks violating individuals' rights and undermining the chain of command and accountability. This failure stems from neglecting the critical step of formalizing the encounter, which is essential for tracking, processing, and potential legal proceedings. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying formal reporting until after all initial investigative actions are complete, also presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. This delay can lead to the loss of critical information, compromise the integrity of evidence, and create a perception of impropriety or a lack of transparency. It deviates from the principle of contemporaneous documentation, which is vital for maintaining accurate records and ensuring accountability in law enforcement. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a rapid assessment of the immediate threat, followed by a clear understanding of the established protocols for apprehension, reporting, and processing. This includes knowing when and how to notify supervisors, initiate paperwork, and preserve any evidence. The framework should emphasize adherence to legal mandates and agency policy, ensuring that operational needs do not supersede procedural integrity and ethical conduct. Question 18. Strategic planning requires U.S. Border Patrol agents in Texas to anticipate and respond to evolving border threats. An agent observes a vehicle traveling at an unusually slow speed near the border, swerving slightly, and then accelerating rapidly when it notices the patrol car. The occupants appear to be looking back repeatedly. What is the most appropriate course of action for the agent? Option A. Initiate a lawful traffic stop to investigate the observed erratic driving and evasive behavior, and if reasonable suspicion is established, conduct a brief inquiry of the occupants and their activities. Option B. Continue observing the vehicle from a distance without initiating any contact, assuming the behavior is not a direct threat. Option C. Immediately order the occupants out of the vehicle and conduct a full search of the vehicle and its occupants based on the suspicious behavior. Option D. Approach the vehicle aggressively and demand immediate answers regarding their presence near the border, without first establishing reasonable suspicion for a stop. The correct answer is A. Initiate a lawful traffic stop to investigate the observed erratic driving and evasive behavior, and if reasonable suspicion is established, conduct a brief inquiry of the occupants and their activities. Explanation. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the operational environment and the legal framework governing U.S. Border Patrol operations in Texas. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it demands immediate decision-making under pressure, balancing the imperative to secure the border with the obligation to adhere to established protocols and legal statutes. The agent must assess a complex situation involving potential contraband and individuals exhibiting evasive behavior, necessitating a judgment call that prioritizes safety, legality, and efficiency. The best approach involves a systematic and lawful response that prioritizes officer safety and evidence preservation, while minimizing disruption to legitimate border activities. This entails initiating a lawful stop based on reasonable suspicion, conducting a thorough but non-intrusive initial inquiry to ascertain the nature of the activity, and then proceeding with further investigative steps only if reasonable suspicion escalates to probable cause. This aligns with U.S. Fourth Amendment principles regarding searches and seizures, requiring specific articulable facts to justify any intrusion beyond a brief, investigatory stop. The agent's actions must be grounded in observable facts and not mere hunches. An incorrect approach would be to immediately detain and search the individuals and vehicle without sufficient articulable facts to establish reasonable suspicion for the stop. This would violate Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspicious activity due to a desire to avoid potential confrontation or delay. This would be a dereliction of duty and could compromise border security. Finally, an approach that involves excessive force or overly aggressive questioning beyond the scope of an initial investigatory stop would also be professionally unacceptable, potentially leading to legal repercussions and undermining public trust. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with observing and documenting all relevant facts. They should then assess these facts against established legal standards for stops, detentions, and searches. If reasonable suspicion exists, an initial limited inquiry is permissible. If probable cause develops, further investigative actions, including searches, may be warranted. Throughout the process, maintaining officer safety, respecting individual rights, and adhering to agency policy are paramount. Question 19. Risk assessment procedures indicate a U.S. Border Patrol agent in Arizona encounters an individual exhibiting signs of severe distress, including labored breathing and disorientation, near a known smuggling route. The individual is carrying a bulky, unsealed bag. What is the most appropriate course of action for the agent? Option A. Immediately assess the individual's immediate medical needs while initiating a lawful, documented search of the bag and surrounding area, prioritizing the individual's safety and well-being alongside border security protocols. Option B. Ignore the individual's signs of distress and proceed directly with a thorough search of the bag, assuming the distress is a tactic to distract from smuggling activities. Option C. Detain the individual and conduct a full, intrusive search of their person and belongings without first addressing their apparent medical distress, focusing solely on the potential for contraband. Option D. Offer immediate medical assistance to the individual and defer any search of their belongings until medical personnel arrive, even if it means delaying potential interdiction of contraband. The correct answer is A. Immediately assess the individual's immediate medical needs while initiating a lawful, documented search of the bag and surrounding area, prioritizing the individual's safety and well-being alongside border security protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Border Patrol agent to balance the immediate need for security with the ethical and legal obligations regarding the treatment of individuals encountered at the border. The agent must make a rapid assessment of a complex situation involving potential contraband, a vulnerable individual, and the possibility of a medical emergency, all while adhering to strict U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) policies and federal law. The pressure of the environment and the potential consequences of either overreaction or underreaction demand careful judgment. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing the immediate safety and well-being of the individual while simultaneously initiating a thorough, lawful, and documented search. This approach recognizes that a person in distress may be unable to comply with standard procedures and that their condition could be a factor in the overall security assessment. It aligns with CBP's mission to secure the border while also upholding humanitarian principles and legal requirements for searches. Specifically, this approach adheres to CBP's use of force continuum, its policies on interacting with vulnerable populations, and the legal standards for searches incident to lawful apprehension or based on reasonable suspicion. The agent must conduct a search that is both effective in detecting contraband and respectful of the individual's dignity and potential medical needs, ensuring all actions are documented. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately detaining the individual and conducting a full, intrusive search without first assessing their apparent distress or offering basic assistance. This fails to acknowledge the potential medical emergency, which could lead to a violation of the individual's rights and potentially exacerbate their condition. It also bypasses the crucial step of assessing the situation holistically, potentially missing critical information. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the individual's distress and focus solely on the possibility of contraband, proceeding with a search that is not tailored to the circumstances. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to consider the full spectrum of possibilities, including that the distress itself might be a symptom of something requiring immediate attention rather than contraband. It also risks violating CBP policy regarding the humane treatment of individuals. A third incorrect approach is to offer assistance without initiating any security measures or documenting the encounter. While humanitarian concern is vital, neglecting the security aspect of border patrol duties is a dereliction of the agent's primary responsibilities. This could allow for the undetected smuggling of contraband or other illicit activities, undermining national security. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety, legality, and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Rapid situational assessment. Quickly evaluate the immediate environment, the individual's demeanor and physical state, and any observable indicators. 2. Prioritization of immediate needs. Determine if there is an immediate threat to life or safety that requires urgent intervention. 3. Application of relevant policies and laws. Consider CBP directives on searches, use of force, and interaction with vulnerable populations, as well as relevant federal statutes. 4. Balanced approach. Integrate security objectives with humanitarian considerations and legal requirements. 5. Documentation. Meticulously record all observations, actions taken, and decisions made. Question 20. Process analysis reveals that a U.S. Border Patrol vehicle, currently at sector headquarters in El Paso, Texas, has received intelligence indicating a potential smuggling vehicle traveling eastbound on Interstate 10, approximately 150 miles from the headquarters. The patrol vehicle has a full tank of 25 gallons and an average fuel efficiency of 12 miles per gallon, MPG. The nearest refueling station along I-10 is located 200 miles east of headquarters. If the patrol vehicle maintains an average speed of 70 miles per hour, what is the maximum distance the patrol vehicle can travel east on I-10 before needing to refuel, considering the need to potentially return to the refueling station? Option A. The patrol vehicle can travel 300 miles east, as this is the total range of the vehicle with a full tank, and the refueling station is within this range. Option B. Patrol vehicle can travel 180 miles east before needing to refuel, as this allows for a 30-mile buffer after reaching the estimated target location and before reaching the refueling station. Option C. The patrol vehicle can travel 210 miles east, as this is the maximum distance it can cover with a full tank, and the refueling station is within this range. Option D. The patrol vehicle can travel 150 miles east, as this is the estimated distance to the target, and the agent should prioritize reaching the target first. The correct answer is B. The patrol vehicle can travel 180 miles east before needing to refuel, as this allows for a 30-mile buffer after reaching the estimated target location and before reaching the refueling station. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a U.S. Border Patrol agent by requiring the precise calculation of travel time and fuel consumption under dynamic conditions, directly impacting operational efficiency and resource allocation. The agent must balance the urgency of a potential interdiction with the practical constraints of vehicle range and available refueling points, necessitating a strong grasp of mathematical principles applied to real-world border security operations. Accurate estimation is critical to avoid stranding the patrol vehicle or failing to intercept a target due to miscalculation. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves calculating the total distance to the estimated location of the target vehicle, then determining the required travel time based on the patrol vehicle's average speed. Subsequently, the fuel consumption for this journey is calculated using the vehicle's MPG and the total distance. Finally, this fuel requirement is compared against the current fuel level and the distance to the nearest refueling station to ascertain if the mission is feasible without refueling. This method ensures a comprehensive assessment of all critical variables, aligning with U.S. Border Patrol operational directives that emphasize efficient resource management and mission success through accurate planning. The calculation would follow these steps. 1. Estimate target location distance, \d target \2. Calculate travel time, \t travel equals \frac d target VAVG \3. Calculate fuel needed, \f needed equals \frac d target MPG \4. Pair \f needed with current fuel and refueling feasibility. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the time it takes to reach the estimated location without considering the fuel required for the round trip or the return journey. This fails to account for the operational reality that agents must be able to return to base or a safe location, potentially leading to a mission failure due to insufficient fuel. Another incorrect approach would be to calculate fuel consumption based on a maximum possible speed rather than a realistic average patrol speed. This could lead to an underestimation of travel time and an overestimation of fuel reserves, creating a false sense of security regarding the vehicle's range. A further incorrect approach would be to only consider the distance to the target and ignore the vehicle's MPG rating, leading to an inaccurate assessment of fuel needs and a high risk of running out of fuel. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship between distance, fuel efficiency, and operational range. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a systematic, multivariable approach to problem solving. This involves identifying all relevant parameters, distance, speed, fuel efficiency, refueling points, applying appropriate mathematical formulas to calculate outcomes, and then comparing these outcomes against operational constraints and mission objectives. A critical step is to always consider worst-case scenarios or necessary return journeys when calculating resource needs.